Hello everyone, and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Tuesday, January 10th, and I hope you all are having a wonderful day so far. I'm your host, William Willis, and in today's show, we're going to bring you some fantastic interviews with incredible guests from around the world. So stay tuned. As always, I'm going to start off with our Techstrong News recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines that are making waves. Then we go to AWS reInvent, where Alan met with Joe Duffy, CEO of Pulumi, to discuss the current state of the IAC market. Also at AWS reInvent, Alan met with Victor Gamov, Principal Developer Advocate at Kong, to discuss how to tie developer outcomes to business outcomes, how to avoid developer burnout, and some of the new projects coming from Kong. Then at AWS reInvent, Alan met with Tanmay Gopal, CEO of Hasura, to talk about the company, which uses GraphQL APIs to make data of all types more accessible. We're then joined by our very own Cody J. Brown, who will hop on to tell us more about some of our upcoming webinars. Next, we go back to AWS reInvent, where Mitch met with StackState CEO Toffer Winslow to discuss the observability company that helps people deal with the increasing rate of change in their environments. Then, at AWS reInvent, Mitch met with Itamar Akorian, Vice President of Product Marketing Data Integration at Qlik, to talk about how its suite of SAP accelerators is now available on Qlik Cloud Data Integration, its enterprise integration platform as a service. We will then air an episode of Techstrong Research Review. In this episode, Mike Rothman and Mitch kick off 2023 with some of the prognostications about what 2023 has in store for us. Then we have back-to-back episodes of View with Vizard. In the first episode, Mike interviews Opverse CEO Arul Jagadish, as Arul explains how a managed DevOps service accelerates application development by reducing management overhead. Then, Mike interviews Inflectra CEO Adam Sandman, as Adam explains how agile frameworks, such as a scaled agile framework, are gaining traction as enterprise IT organizations continue to shift more responsibility for cybersecurity left. We then go to KubeCon Cloud Native Con North America, where Alan met with Paul Stamp, Vice President of Products at Cato Security, to discuss the company, an automated security incident response provider for cloud workloads. Also at KubeCon Cloud Native Con, Alan met with Alex Jones, Director of Kubernetes Engineering at Canonical, to discuss the history of Canonical's Kubernetes involvement. And that's what we have coming up for you on this episode of Techstrong TV. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for January 10th. First up, Twitter revealed a data leak that included personal emails connected to over 235 million Twitter accounts. Additionally, the leaks could have potentially revealed the identities of millions of anonymous Twitter users who may have used the site to speak out against oppressive governments. This news of the data leak could cause problems for Twitter with the Federal Trade Commission, as the company agreed to a consent agreement back in 2011 requiring it to address significant data security issues. And it was only May of last year when Twitter was fined $150 million for violating the consent order and was required to implement an improved privacy protection program. Next, Samsung Electronics have announced that its quarterly profits have fallen by 2/3 to an 8-year low. Additionally, the company's profits are expected to continue to shrink in the current quarter, as demand for electronic devices also remains low. The drop in demand for the company's memory products was greater than anticipated, as customers sought to reduce their purchases in an effort to cut costs. Samsung's mobile business also experienced a decrease in profits due to the ongoing economic issues. Zooming out, Samsung has always been a good indicator of consumer demand, so this sets a bad outlook for other tech firms this quarter. In other news, the largest school district in the US, the New York City School District, has decided to restrict access to ChatGPT website on school devices and networks due to concerns about the negative impact on student learning. While ChatGPT has only been available for several weeks, it has already raised concerns about the future of AI in education and other industries. Many school districts are still trying to figure out how to set policies on its use, with some of the opponents of ChatGPT arguing that the tool does not encourage critical thinking and problem-solving skills, which are quite important for academic and lifelong success. With this all being said, students can still access ChatGPT from their personal phones and computers, but there are steps being taken to detect misuse. Next up, the instant messaging service, WhatsApp, is enabling users to connect via proxy servers in order to stay online in the event of an internet shutdown or disruption. This move, which aims to prevent repeat occurrences of blackouts, is intended to allow people to communicate and retain a connection to the internet. WhatsApp, which is owned by Meta, has reassured users that connecting via proxy will not compromise the privacy or security of their personal messages and will be protected by end-to-end encryption. In addition to this announcement, Meta has also encouraged its global community to volunteer proxies and will offer guidance on setting them up. On Digital CXO, we have an article looking at the enterprise tech trends that shaped 2022. Going into 2022, CISOs wanted to focus on the new post-COVID-19 normal, with digital transformation and improving cybersecurity posture. But the year had many twists and turns that impacted these goals. Regardless, enterprise moved forward, and this article shows some of the top trends of the year that they chose to do so. To learn more, go to digitalcxo.com. On Container Journal, we have an article looking at how Vertana is expanding its Kubernetes cluster to include infrastructure performance management and monitoring capabilities via an AI platform. Vertana has stated that the goal of this is to resolve issues faster, de-risk optimization risks, and reduce the cloud costs on a single platform. To learn more, go to containerjournal.com. Finally, on Security Boulevard, we have an article looking at a survey showing that security teams are failing to address open source vulnerabilities. The survey, which was conducted by Mend, found that the number of open source vulnerabilities is outpacing the growth of open source software. The article looks at some of the usual suspects as to why this is the case, but also gives some best AppSec practices. To learn more, go to securityboulevard.com. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're back here at AWS reInvent with our coverage from the Win Techstrong TV suite. Happy to be joined by my friend Joe Duffy from Pulumi. I haven't seen Joe in person since before COVID. We've spoken, but yeah. It's been It's great to see you in person, Joe. I hope all is well.
Yeah, it's
welcome.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
So Joe, look, Pulumi is a brand and a product and a open source project, and it's, in the bubble I live in, it's a known entity, but maybe some people out here aren't. It's possible, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Pulumi with them.
Yeah, for sure. So, unbelievably, we hit our 5-year anniversary starting as a company this year, earlier in March. And so Pulumi's an infrastructure as code technology. It's an open source project, got a great commercial SaaS to help teams adopt it at scale. But it's really infrastructure as code meant for infrastructure teams and developers and helps them work more closely together. I think the difference between our approach for infrastructure as code and the typical approach is we've really embraced languages, every language. So JavaScript, Python, Go, C# Java, actually added YAML support. The L in YAML stands for language. Kind of blew people's minds because they think of us as like, general purpose languages. But the idea is just to really bring everything we love about programming languages and blend that everything we know about infrastructure as code and just really help people really get more stuff done in the cloud.
Absolutely. You know, Joe, we were talking off camera. We had a chance to catch up. Look, infrastructure as code is something that we've talked about for as long as I've been involved in DevOps and DevOps.com, which is probably eight going on 9 years now. And there's been tools, right? When you go back, when I first started DevOps.com, Chef, Puppet, Ansible, right? These were all, at some level, infrastructure as code plays. Now, they've gone in different directions over since then, and in different places and different levels of success. There's been other, products that have come in, Pulumi being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But let's think about. Let's take a look at the Pulumi customer journey, if you will. If you can,
Yep.
share with our audience, what is the average kind of experience journey where, all roads lead to Pulumi kind of thing?
Yeah, I think honestly, there's maybe 3 different journeys. One is large companies that have been around for long enough to have used a lot of the early infrastructure as code tools like Ansible, Chef, Puppet, and the world has sort of evolved from what I call the 2 virtual machines and a database world, which was, things were simple 15 years ago, 10 years ago, where, you had a simple 2-tier web application, you need a database, and things, you shipped new code every quarter, every month maybe. But these days, there's so many moving pieces with the modern cloud. So many of these large customers have to do hybrid. And so a lot of those old tools are still great. They still work for the virtual machines and configuration, but at that level of scale and complexity, we find that a lot of people are sort of hitting the wall on the prior generation of infrastructure as code. And that's where having a full-blown language helps you tame some of that complexity. So that's sort of one journey. The second is, customers are fortunate enough to be born today, born in the cloud.
Right.
It's a very different journey for them because they don't have a lot of this legacy to deal with. It might be their first time picking an infrastructure as code tool, and so Pulumi is the obvious choice. And then I'd say the third category is maybe companies that started 5 years ago, 7 years ago. Think of folks like Snowflake. They had the fortune of being born sort of in the modern cloud era, but they're still trying to modernize a bit more. And they might already have bet on a different infrastructure as code tool and have to figure out, okay, how do I evolve from that world to the new world?
Listen, and look, this is not a new fact pattern. We've substituted cloud in maybe for something else, but over my time, I've seen the compute stack change, not a lot, but a couple of times. And so when I look at this, I think to myself, what makes me think it's finished now, right?
It's not. It's not.
And, one of the things, as a CEO, right, I always tell my people, is it going to work? Just tell me it's going to work, and is it going to work tomorrow?
Right.
Right, because I hate paying for things that only work for a day, so to speak. What do you see tomorrow? What do you see? How are we future-proofing with Pulumi?
Yeah, it's a great question. My background, interestingly, the way we came up with Pulumi is I spent a lot of time on developer platforms before coming in. I started my career in IT. I worked at EMC, worked on old storage stacks, and I had Symmetrics in my office. Hopkinton, Mass. Yeah, I actually worked at the headquarters.
Executive Briefing Center.
Joe Tucci required that I wear a suit while I was programming. Which
really? Was Joe. Yeah. I remember those days.
Yeah, but I had a taste of infrastructure back then. But I went off in developer land and I came back. But as you point out, like a lot of the patterns are similar. In developer land, it was okay. We moved from DOS to Windows, and then Linux came along, and we see the evolution there. You see the evolution for databases. From like Oracle, Sybase, SQL Server. I think the one constant in this industry is things are going to change.
Yeah.
And you need to future-proof yourself for that sort of change. And when we started Pulumi, we said, okay, we can go create our own programming language, we can go create our own DSL or something, or we could tap into decades of experience that we already have with tried and true programming languages that people already know and love. Let's do that. Right. We don't have to recreate the wheel. And I think because of that, we're able to adapt much more quickly to the changing landscape.
I agree. But, a couple of things. First of all, I don't think the world needs another language, another computer language. Secondly, there is a level of comfort dealing in the languages you know.
Yes.
Rather than having to learn just a whole new It's like changing offensive coordinators in football, right? It's really hard. It's a 1 to 2 year idiot tax you got to pay, right? But nevertheless, a lot of your customers, I know, come from using other infrastructure as code type of tools. And is it just the comfort of being able to use the language you know, or is there another more inherent advantages in Pulumi?
The two things we see very commonly in being here at reInvent, talking to people at the booth, I would say 60% of the people that we talk to have these challenges today with current infrastructure tools that are not Pulumi. The two challenges we see are, one, complexity at scale. We went from 2 virtual machines in a database to a handful of resources to now a single project. You've got IAM roles, and you've got Lambdas and API gateways, and you've got containers and container registries and Kubernetes clusters, and it goes on and on. And at that level of scale, the existing infrastructure as code tools start to break down. Programming languages were built to deal with complexity. You have abstraction, you have encapsulation, you have a real notion of sharing and reuse, so you're not copy and pasting scripts all over the place. And if you copy and paste scripts, that's a recipe for disaster. Security, mistakes, hard to evolve, hard to version. We've just tapped into decades of software engineering so we can solve those problems. So that's the first thing we hear. The second is we want to put our developers more in the driver's seat. And putting a developer in the driver's seat means, not just giving them the keys to the kingdom, but empowering them to get some things done with guardrails. And so oftentimes we work with the infrastructure platform team, and they want to do this, and maybe they tried with infrastructure as code tools, and developers say, I know Python, I don't want to touch that domain-specific language, no thank you. And so what they find is empowering developers, they have projects and it just fails. Yeah. And that's tough. And so, but we find people that can solve those problems way more productive. We have one customer, they came and spoke at our team meeting a few weeks ago. They said, our company thinks Pulumi's magic pixie dust. You just sprinkle it on the team, and suddenly 6 times more stuff comes out of that team.
If only it was true, right, man? It was just that easy.
Yes.
But it's nice. I mean, that's a really nice thing to hear from a customer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It really is. Hey, Joe, when we were talking off camera, you gave me some metrics. I don't know if you don't want to divulge them, don't. But, in terms of, you guys have had a solid, in spite of macroeconomic conditions, you guys have had a solid couple of months, quarters here, with some real milestones reached. Whatever you're comfortable with, if you want to share with the audience.
Yeah, so Pulumi's open source. So for us, everything starts with community, and we recently surpassed 100,000 community members, which is amazing. And we recently passed 1,500 paying customers as well, and that's up, between 4 to 5x year over year. So that's beautiful, growing great. And yeah, we also have some interesting statistics around productivity of people that have adopted Pulumi. But no, it's going great.
I love it, man. So I think we've done a good job of laying that whole table. Joe, how do we get started with Pulumi?
So Pulumi's free and open source. Just go to pulumi.com. You'll see it.
Spell it for us.
Oh, Pulumi.
Easy.
In fact, the top 10 search phrases hitting our homepage include 5 misspellings of Pulumi.
I would imagine.
So even if you misspell it, you'll find the homepage.
Hopefully it comes to you anyway, but it is Pulumi.
That's correct. And then there's a little button, get started, click that, download the open source. Super easy. In fact, we hear from people all the time, easiest way to get started with the cloud that they've experienced. You'll be up and running in 2 minutes.
And if we haven't mentioned, I want to mention it. You could use the free Pulumi open source, join 100,000 other people who are, and then you guys offer kind of Pulumi as a service, if you will, a hosted version.
Yep, Pulumi, really is a SaaS-first company, and so most of our major customers will use our online version. It's just super easy. It's similar to how Git works with GitHub. Use the Pulumi open source, use the Pulumi service, easy to collaborate, security built in, reliability, compliance, all the good things.
All the reasons why you go for SaaS.
Totally.
Joe, man, it's great seeing you. I hope it doesn't take 3 years to get together again in person, man. Good luck. You're doing great stuff. Pulumi's a great company. Check them out. It's like magic pixie dust. We're going to take a break here at Techstrong. We'll be back in just a moment.
is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're back here from AWS reInvent. We're in the Win at the Techstrong TV suite. And you know, one of the great things I've loved about this conference is I'm seeing my friends in person again. Not all of them, you know, a lot of them I haven't seen in years. This fella right here, I've seen
running in me like
right. Well,
everywhere.
Well, he was a refugee living in Florida for a couple of months. He escaped from New Jersey.
Yeah.
And he came down to Florida and he came in the office. He was kind of one of our official office crew.
Yeah.
And then he went back to New Jersey.
And I went use of some of your office like a green screen stuff.
Oh yeah, you were in our studio.
there.
Yeah, no, we gave you the key to the place. You just and then you moved back to New Jersey on us.
Yeah. The economy, it makes us, you know, to do the
Well,
things.
maybe winter's coming.
Yes, exactly.
All you folks in New Jersey are coming
will
back,
come back
anyway.
Absolutely.
But it's Victor Gamoff. He's with Kong. Victor, great to see you, man.
It's great to have you. It's
So
great to be here.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm a host of podcast myself, so that's why I like the habits.
You always do.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's great to see everyone, and it's great to be here in Vegas.
With 55,000 people at an event. Who would have thought that?
Yeah.
That's crazy
I
amount
was
of
like
people.
going around, and like I haven't been in the event like this for a very long time.
Me either.
Very long time. The last time probably like the biggest one is maybe Oracle World or like the Google Cloud something was 2019.
Yeah, certainly
But
before.
before, yeah,
COVID.
before. And it's my first event. Like,
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So this is what they used to be like before COVID as
Yeah.
well. The last one we were like this was probably RSA right before COVID,
Yeah.
2020. It's about 45,000.
Yeah.
So the mustache is new too. Let's hear about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm supporting this cause called Movember, raising awareness for men's health and mental health and men's like physical health. Collecting some money using like my sources like my Instagram and some of the folks from the company also supporting this cause. And we build this strong team in
Good for you.
November, and we're raising some money to help to battle this type of things.
It's a real thing. We have someone on our team, Jared Harris. If he's watching this, he also has a Tom Selleck mustache.
Yeah.
And he's
I struggle to have like a good.
no, his is a
facial
nice
hair.
bushy mustache.
Yeah.
It came out very nice, yeah. But shout out to Jared on that as well. Anyway, hey, let's talk a little bit about Kong. What's the news here? Well, before we get into the news, maybe not everyone here knows Kong. Why don't we start there, Vic?
Yeah, so the Kong is full-blown API management platform. We cover all aspects of API, starting from development, design of APIs, to the running APIs using like a gateway and service mesh, into the govern using the things like developer portal, things like the service hub, and all the things that people can do for you building API as a product. You building your next, I don't know, Twitter or whatever social network you're building these days, and you need to provide the APIs for the users who want to build the apps for this API. You need to have a platform where developers go and explore your API and register their apps there. So we handle all this automation for you. And as a vendor of this API management, you can do things like the collecting metrics for API, who is capturing those APIs, like how many people will using like slash products versus slash like users endpoints, and see how you can build them differently. And we also provide all the ways to manage all these kind of things, like you gold customer, you want to have like a super fast access to fast API servers, you will have a very generous like a limit of API calls, or you just like starting doing something, you're not like a super rich for these APIs, you can have access to this API, but your limits of API calls will be much more lower. So we handle all this automation on this side of things. Plus, as a developer who builds the microservices these days, we also provide the tools for automating and securing and providing reliable connectivity using service mesh. So we have covered all aspects, what we call API connectivity or like application connectivity within all like a level 7 like application level protocols.
Love it. You know, and most of our audience, I think, work with APIs.
Yep.
They understand it. But really, look, when I look at the API economy, the API market, what's really been a game changer for me is this whole microservices architecture thing, where so now to me we have sort of external APIs and internal APIs, right?
Yeah.
The microservices ones are the internal ones to me, where I have APIs running internally within my app with each other. It's like talk to different containers and different components and everything else, and that has been like adding gasoline to a fire in terms of how many more APIs I need to be managing now.
Yeah.
Right? It was hard enough managing the millions of APIs I had going externally.
Yeah.
Now I got millions more internally.
Yeah.
And that, you know, a dollar here, a dollar there, before you know it, it's real money.
Yeah.
And now we got, you know, there's a real problem managing these APIs. Kong's one of the leading, you know, providers of that, let's call it a 365-degree API management thing. Let's talk, any news here at the show around this? I know you guys had some.
Yeah. So one of the things that we developed for like a couple of years is kind of, usually people looking at the API gateways as one solid thing. You know, you deploy this, you put a lot of stuff there, like maybe some of the routing on your APIs, maybe some of the API security. And if you need to deploy this in a different environment, you need to continue to do the same thing in another environment, or maybe another cloud, or another, you trying to have a decentralized deployment, but for management of these things, you need to continue to repeat yourself. So we come up with this idea that what about we will take the same, very similar approach that the service meshes were doing for a while. We have a centralized control plane that manages decentralized deployment. So we separated data plane for gateway in separated control plane. And now we're offering the control plane as a managed service. So you will be responsible deploying just a tiny bit of Kong next to your data, next to your API, and we will be handling configuration, developer portal, service hub, and all the plugins, licensing for your applications, different environments, runtime groups, all the things will be handled this. And you will just receive this as a kind of like one of the requests from our control plane to your data plane.
That's good, fantastic.
Yeah, and we also support all like a famous infrastructure as a code things. We start the pioneering this idea of API ops. It's how to drive the overall API collaboration between the different collaborators in your company.
So when we talk about infrastructure as code platforms, we're talking like Terraform, Chef, Puppet, Ansible. What about Pulumi? We just had the CEO of Pulumi a little while ago. That as well.
Yeah. Nice.
I love it. And what'd you call it? API ops?
Yeah.
Just what I need, another ops.
Another ops,
to
yes.
remember.
That's what I telling people. So essentially the idea was that there is a standard of API definition, Open API standard, and everyone knows that, and everyone understands the way how you structure your API, you structure your schemas about the payload. What about we have a collaboration around this? Using the simple tools like a Git, like a GitHub. And we do have a pull request review and saying, yes, we like how this API looks like, or how this entity that this API would be spitted out. So we're good. So what we're going to do next with this? We take this API spec. We have a tool called Insomnia, which is a developing tool, it's open source. You design, test this API thing inside Insomnia, click the Git button, like a push to Git. It will be syncing to the Git, and where you can pick up from the GitHub action, turn it into deployable configuration to the Kong, ship it to Connect, and Connect will distribute this to all environments that you need to deploy this. So we handle this approach from designing this and envision how your API would look like to the point where it will be like reality in a matter of seconds through automation and through all these pipelines.
I love it.
Yeah.
This is great. And it's available now.
It is available now. We just revamped we introduced like a new UI. It's much simpler. We introduced much, so a few weeks back, we spoke at the, with Mitch at KubeCon, and I was talking about the Kong Summit, some of the things that we announced there. We announced some of the, so Kong is big proponent of open source.
Sure.
The Kong gateway is the largest API gateway open source. 35,000 stars on GitHub.
Wow.
Yeah. And like we're not asking anything for them.
No, I get it.
And we also open source the engine that drives our Connect thing. It's kind of like our thing that I started our conversation, this control plane, data plane separation. We call it COCO. And it is a protocol that allows to data plane effectively talk to any control plane and control multiple control planes or multiple data planes. I did this. There's like a YouTube video where I brought some of my friends from Mercedes who also like users of an open source thing, and they will demo in how you can use controlling multiple Kong instances and running in Docker, just because we wanted to do this demo from just one plane. We just sent the route configuration, plugin configuration, and it was available immediately. Same scale, but in managed service. Now you can have your different environments deployed in different clouds or different regions, and this configuration can be shipped through the just simple git commit from Insomnia.
Love it, man.
Yeah, all about automation. If something is painful, you have to do this often, or find a way how to automate this.
Absolutely. Because I had this discussion earlier with someone. Automation and AI, ML, and these kinds of things, they don't mean less people.
Yeah.
It frees people up from doing the things they hate doing.
Exactly.
The repetitive, mindless almost kind of things they do, to do things that get you excited, that are interesting.
Absolutely, spot on. Last year, I was asked to do kind of like a prediction for 2022, and I was like, well, let's focus about technology, what's going to be new and exciting. In 2023, I actually got this idea, like people is burning out because of this, like supporting legacy stuff and doing repetitive tasks. And for 2023, we need to, like engineering leaders, need to enable automation.
You know what? We have a Predict 2023 show, January 12th. Why don't you do a session on that?
Yeah. I would love to. Absolutely.
I'm inviting you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Victor, it's a pleasure, man. I'm hoping
Always.
when it gets good and cold in New Jersey, you'll remember where to come home.
I will be there.
All right?
Yeah.
All right, man.
Thank you.
Victor Gamov, Kong here at Techstrong TV. We are in Las Vegas. That's where we are for AWS reInvent. We'll be back in a minute. Hi, everyone. We're back here at our AWS reInvent 2022 coverage at the Win in our Techstrong TV suite. Our next guest traveled a little bit of a way to see us here. It's Tamai Gopal. Tamai is with Hasura. Did I say it right?
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay, man. Tamai, first of all, welcome and thanks for coming. I know you had a hard time getting upstairs. Sometimes the last mile, right? We had a last mile issue.
That's exactly it.
Security downstairs, we've tried our best to work with them here at the Win, and sometimes they're a little overzealous.
No worries.
Anyway, hey man, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Let's hear the Hasura story.
Yep. I'm the CEO, co-founder at Hasura. Started Hasura a few years ago from work that came out of a previous company that I used to run. Our kind of entire idea was that we're spending way too much time building APIs for getting access to data. Data is really important. People who are using that data, they need to build products. That's important. But kind of building the plumbing that's required to get access to that data, that's just grunt work. And so we figured out a way to automate that. And we open sourced a solution 3.5, 4 years ago. Since then, became really popular with developers. And then we've just been adding support for more and more databases since then.
You're being modest. But, I mean, in a nutshell, yes, that is Hasura. But, give our audience a sense of the scale of the company.
Yeah, so we, I think over the last few years, we've grown to, I think we were at like 100 million downloads last year. We're about 700 million downloads now. I think 5 of the Fortune 10 use us. I love saying like world's largest space tech company, electric car company, SaaS company, social media company. So I think that's just been awesome.
That's amazing. That's enough, right? That's congratulations to you. That's really fantastic. And then you guys have a new announcement you just recently made. If you want to share it with the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just added support for Snowflake, and that's I think it's been one of the most asked for OLAP systems from our users, and so that's going to be amazing. I think it's our second OLAP store that we've added support for. We did BigQuery earlier this year, and we added Athena just a few weeks ago. And hot on the heels of this, now we have Snowflake. So that's.
I think, look, I'm not an expert in the space, but from what we see from our audience, Snowflake is just a huge base.
It's massive
of users,
yep.
and I would imagine that's something really out there.
Yep.
I tried to explain to someone recently about Hasura, and it's basically GraphXL APIs. It creates a platform, right, that allows all of your APIs to sort of
yep.
work it. Almost,
yep.
And again, I don't know it as well as you do. But in my mind, it's almost like that mesh, if you will.
Yep.
Right? That
yep.
allows, it's an API mesh.
Yep. Yep.
In this case, GraphXL.
Exactly. I think that's the right way to think about it. I think if you if you have a data system like Snowflake, right, and you have applications that kind of want to consume that data over an API, or different teams, or you're kind of sharing that data outside the organization, you need to have APIs that do that. And now the challenge here is that because you have so many different types of models inside that Snowflake kind of database, right, or inside a bunch of other data stores, creating APIs for each of those models can get really cumbersome. And so exactly what you said, you want to kind of mesh that data together, right? So you want an API that can kind of simultaneously fetch data from multiple places, join it, aggregate it, do stuff like that, and importantly, return that data in a format that modern applications want to use, right? If you look back to a few years ago, the big part of the rise of Mongo was that it spoke JSON.
Right.
Right? And it gave up on so many things at the time when Mongo initially started. It said no ACID, no integrity, right? But people didn't care. No security, right? Like that's how it started.
I thought that's what no SQL standard for.
Exactly, right? But developers just fell in love because they were like, this is JSON. That's what I want to speak, right? And so these modern APIs that kind of mash that data together and give you that JSON format becomes really important for people who are using the API. And that's where kind of Hasura and the GraphQL automation really works well for people.
Love it. Back to the Snowflake integration. So this was announced December 6th. It's available on the Hasura website already.
Yep, you can run it as a Docker container. You can run it off our cloud service, connect it to your existing Snowflake instances.
Let's talk. One of the interesting things about Hasura, I don't think you said it, so I'll say it. Right? It is the first open source Indian-based unicorn.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I'm at the point where I don't like to qualify things with something as India-based or Israeli-based or China-based. It's a unicorn, right? And there aren't that many of them. But that being said, we've seen such an explosion of open source business model, right? And I would say the most dominant one is, hey, use the open source product, download it, use it. It may not be the easiest thing to use, and it may not be the most scalable thing because it's on your own infrastructure, but if you like it, you should pay for our hosted model, right? That's become the dominant open source model. And that's pretty much the Hasura model as well.
Exactly. And so what we do is we have kind of our open source solution that people can run, deploy themselves. You can run it on your laptop, run it on-prem, wherever you want. And then we have a managed cloud service, exactly what you said, where we take care of hosting it for you, scaling it for you, solving problems like caching, securing it,
updates,
all of that. And that's kind of our dominant commercial delivery vector. We also have an on-prem enterprise version that has certain bells and whistles attached on top of the open source version that are important for enterprises who are running in kind of like, compliant environments and stuff like that. One of our largest customers is the world's largest healthcare insurance company, and they have, in that kind of a business where you have data for like 20, 30, 40 million users in a healthcare kind of setting, it's really hard to innovate. Right, and kind of freeing them up by giving them secure APIs is so important. And our enterprise solution, they run it as a inside their own cloud, and that's kind of another delivery vector for us. So,
love it. So you're here at AWS reInvent with 55 or 54,999 other people.
0.99.
Yeah.
It's true.
What's your impression?
It's been great. I think it's been we were here last year. That was our first reInvent. So it's been great. I think the quality of the kind of audience and the participants is improved, and that's been amazing. Larger number of people. For us personally, also, I think the two big secular trends around data and APIs has kept exploding. Right, just if you look at the reInvent announcements. I don't know what the right percentage would be. Maybe 50 to 75% were all just data. Mm-hmm. It was all themed around data, right? Like new data sources, new ways to integrate data, new ways to get data from one place to another, new way to govern it, secure
Well,
it.
it's
right?
all about the data. It's almost like we
data.
rediscovered, but it was always all about the data. We just didn't think about it.
Yep.
But yeah, no, certainly data has become primate.
So I think that's that's really important for our business, and that's kind of what we're enabling, right? We're saying you have all this data. You need to put it to use. You need APIs on it. Otherwise, how are people going to use it? You've done all the hard work of getting this data, right? And so it's been great for us too.
So Hasura is the way to unlock your data.
That's what it is.
Hey man, it's a pleasure seeing you.
Likewise.
I'm glad you're doing well here at AWS. We'll probably see Zoom next time. It's like see you again, but keep up the great work. It's
Thanks
a
for
great
having
story.
me.
I love it. Hasura, check them. Oh, you know what? The website, hasura.com. Hasura. Check them out. We're at Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We have a few more guests coming up today from reInvent, and we'll be here tomorrow as well. So take care. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. Cody J. Brown here with some programs coming up this week at Techstrong Learning. So starting off tomorrow, Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, the AI Infrastructure Alliance presents Out of the Ivory Tower, AI in the Real World. This panel will cover the challenges with making AI ML models function in highly scalable applications. Following tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern on Security Boulevard, we'll be looking left, right, and in between as we think about API security. This discussion will cover the current state of API vulnerability and propose where one should begin their API security journey. Now, picking back up Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern on Container Journal, the 2023 Kubernetes Benchmark Report is out. Fairwind scanned over 150,000 workloads and are now here to show us what works and what doesn't work as we begin another exciting year. And our final program of the week kicks off on Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern as we discuss mobile DevOps with GitLab and AWS. Our speakers will cover how to automate development workflows from running tests to app store deployment. So this one you will not want to miss. That's all I've got for you right now, but we do have plenty of upcoming and on-demand programs for you here at Techstrong Learning, so stay tuned.
This is Techstrong TV.
Well, welcome. Hey, we're at a special location today. We are at the Techstrong Studios here in the Wynn in Las Vegas for reInvent 2022. Lots of exciting things happening, and we have some fantastic guests lined up. Speaking of which, Topper Winslow, who is CEO with Stackstake. Welcome.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Good to have you. So, for a few folks that may not know who Stackstake is or yourself, tell us just a little bit about the space that you're in, and we'll kind of get into what's happening.
Sure. So StackState's an observability company. It's a crowded space, tons of vendors, a lot of money has been poured into it over the last decade, really in parallel with all this transition that larger enterprises are making to go from managing their own infrastructure to becoming cloud native, driving a lot of retooling. We've taken an approach that embraces, I think, many of the things that companies care about, harnessing all this data that their environments are generating, but trying to provide a different kind of explanatory context around it by infusing all that with topology, the relationships between all the building blocks that companies have that make up these environments that they're migrating to, and understanding how that topology morphs over time, and then correlating that with all the other telemetry information. So we're a company that's 7 years old, a lot of big enterprise customers in financial services, telecommunications, managed service providers, but it's a horizontal platform to help people deal with the increasing rate of change in their environments.
Yeah, in the startup world, we always say if you can solve your problems in the financial services or telecom or the big, cable companies, whatever it is, that's when you've really kind of reached that level where you can do some big stuff.
Yeah, and that's really where we were born. We were born out of a consulting project inside a large Dutch bank that was having persistent performance problems with one of their big customer-facing apps. They couldn't solve it themselves. They called in a trusted services partner who sent a couple young hotshot performance consultants. They set about trying to gather all the data that they could and pretty quickly realized it's not that there's not enough data. It's just that there's no integrated data set that puts it all together, and there's no sort of explanatory context wrapped around all that data. And that's what they set out to build starting back in 2015.
It's interesting because, in the ops world, we always talked about log aggregation, getting all the data together in one place, putting some nice query language and app building capabilities is kind of where that all started. But it seems like both the size and scale of applications and now cloud native, Microsoft, the complexity of the apps that we're building, the distribution across clouds, we're dealing a much bigger and important variable. So it's not just about getting the data together in one place.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the volume of data that's thrown off by all this cloud infrastructure is massive. And I think what many approaches have focused on to date is, okay, how do we gather more and more of this data? How do we store it for longer and longer periods? How do we make it more queryable? And I think those are all good things. That's a step in the right direction. Our view, though, is that you need a secret decoder ring, like a Rosetta Stone, to separate the signal that's in all the noise of all this telemetry. And that's where topology comes in.
Yeah, topology is that context you were talking about, right? I mean,
topology is the
I don't
context.
need more data, right? I've got plenty of data. Maybe I don't know if I have the right data, but I need that context around it to tell me what's going on.
Exactly. Show me what changed. Show me how the dependencies between different components, different Kubernetes containers, different microservices, your increasingly virtualized infrastructure. Show me how those relationships are changing all the time, because anytime there's a problem, the first question that usually gets asked in a war room is, what changed?
Yeah. Nothing changed. Something's always changed.
That's almost never true. In fact, I've seen recent surveys that are saying that the rate of change in most large scale environments is like 1 change per second.
Exactly. I've had this conversation with several people of we need to think of a world of constant change. It's a moving stream. It's not a state that stays in one place at any one point in time, because it's always anywhere in the stack, across the stack, environments, locations, all of that. So that's a different mindset. Much bigger problem to try to solve, and tougher one.
It is, yeah. I mean, when we set out to do it, we sort of thought having a graph of the topology and how that graph was changing second by second was the way to unlock all the insights. The problems that we had in our early developments was trying to do it with a commercial off-the-shelf graph database. And what we found is that none of them had the scalability properties to just deal with the rate of change that's going on in these environments. If you've got an environment that consists of thousands or hundreds of thousands, even millions of components, and those are changing on a second-by-second basis, it becomes super hard to find a graph database that will accommodate that rate of change. So we ended up building our own.
Just tracking down the change.
Exactly.
That's what the problem is.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I know StackState is, AI ops is part of the equation too, and there's the market hype, and I've been working on AI since the '80s, so it was going to solve problems back, and it gets overhyped. But there's a lot of value that we see now through machine learning algorithms and things we can apply in targeted ways.
Yep, I think that's true. I sort of think of AI ops in some ways as a bit of a Rorschach test, right? People sort of project what they want to see in it. We like one of the definitions that we've seen out there that says it's fundamentally about cross-domain data ingestion and analytics. It's about wrapping topology context around it, It's about doing event correlation, and it's about suggesting possible remediations when problems happen. Those things resonate with us and fit very well in our model.
Interesting. So we're Topher. We're at obviously in Las Vegas at AWS reInvent, and man, this I went to the first reInvent, and this thing is so massive. I mean, it was big then. I was surprised how big the first one was. But tell us about kind of your perspective about working with the hyperscalers, the large cloud service providers like the reInvents in the world, and how you fit into that ecosystem, because you're getting more than a platform when you're working with the hyperscalers. It's a big ecosystem.
For sure. I think the strategy for many of the hyperscalers is they want to go beyond just providing commoditized infrastructure to more and more value-added services layered on top of that. And they have their own approaches for observability, providing managed Grafana, managed Prometheus services. And there's a bunch of sessions here at reInvent about that. And then they've got their whole marketplaces to let 1,000 flowers bloom, where you have folks like us and our many competitors who have their own offerings for sale in those. So I think it's a smart strategy, right? You provide a base level of capabilities that customers can get going with at no to low cost, and then have a bunch of other sort of value-added players available through their marketplace.
Now, you mentioned you started in the financial services. Have you found that you kind of go with your customers into the cloud as they move into it? Do they find you in the marketplace more often than not? Which is, I would imagine, it's probably the latter story, or the first where you're going with your customers into the cloud.
Yeah, it's mostly that. It's one of the things that we find is a precipitating event to get customers rethinking about how they manage their whole IT operations is these digital transformations and the migrations to the cloud. And as they start implementing all these technologies, CI/CD, pushing new code into the environment, increasingly sort of virtualized and containerized environments, it puts a lot of stress on the traditional tooling. And so, starting with a customer while they're still in their early phases of their digital transformation, and then going from on-prem to hybrid, and then increasingly launching pure cloud native services is a great path for us to get engaged with.
I imagine, in addition, of course, looking and talking to new potential customers here, you have a lot of customers that are attending. What would you say some of the challenges that they've been with you for a while, they're matured with you in terms of observability and capabilities that they're implementing. What are the next set of challenges that people are looking for? I've got to figure out how to solve these problems now.
Yeah, as people are rolling out sort of Kubernetes as the core of their infrastructure, and we're seeing that across all industries. I mean, it's a big part of telco and the whole transition to 5G. Financial services are doing it. As they increasingly rely on Kubernetes troubleshooting is hard. This ephemeral infrastructure, and there's been a handful of companies that have been created that deal explicitly with Kubernetes troubleshooting. Our view is that this topology-led approach makes a ton of sense in that environment where the containers are being spun up and spun down, and the relationships and dependencies are changing at a high rate. So that's when you combine that topology map with all the telemetry data that both the Kubernetes infrastructure generates, as well as all the associated surrounding infrastructure, that's the key to really finding out where the core problems are, and differentiating whether it's happening in the Kubernetes layer or some of the dependent layers.
It's interesting because we introduced the complexity of Kubernetes, all the great problems that it solves, but it brings with it that complexity. The microservices architecture itself, right now you're talking about thousands or tens of thousands of services across applications, not a dozen or two in a SOA kind of service. So that a complexity in just understanding what's happening there.
Yeah.
On top of Kubernetes, on top of all the cloud services, it's a complex stack.
Yeah, well, and then you layer in sort of continuous code pushes to refresh those microservices. The code is changing, the configuration of components are changing, the relationships between components are changing. It's this level of complexity and high rate of change that is driving this whole rethinking of how people tool their management infrastructure.
And the ephemeral nature, the time nature of what. That condition doesn't exist anymore. That code's not that code.
Exactly.
Now that we're troubleshooting.
And that's why you kind of need this sort of time machine to be able to rewind the DVR movie of your environment and say, okay, these problems happened, an hour ago. What was the change that happened 1 hour and 1 second ago that started to precipitate them? And that when you have that insight, you're not chasing 1,000 separate alerts that are really symptoms of the underlying cause. You can really drill into the underlying cause itself.
Mm-hmm. It's a big market. I mean, observability's been hot for a while. There's a lot of players in it. There are new people coming in too, who are kind of native observability. Other folks that have come up the log aggregation, log management. How do you stand out? How do you kind of show your chops in a market that's got a lot of good players in this area?
Yeah, good companies, well backed, and some decent open source options as well too.
Exactly.
Yeah, our view is that you've got to be low friction in order to give people a taste of what you do, right? So the day of heavyweight implementations and having 3 months for a rollout to really try whether something works in your environment are gone. We're really focused on fast time to value. Let's focus on a set of use cases and a set of your technology stack and show you something that works within a couple of hours. That works particularly well for us in AWS environments and Kubernetes running in those environments. But then being able to show someone this map of their environment, how that map is changing second by second, rewinding the map so you could see what it looked like the second before a problem happened. Those technical differentiators and making it easy for customers to experience those quickly, that I think is the key to having a high velocity business.
I'm curious when you're in the vendor space as the technology provider, you get to talk to a lot of people. And they're usually like the questions that you get that can tell, okay, I know these folks are on this edge of it, right? They're not just beginning their journey, they're getting to the difficult stuff. What are some of those challenges that customers ask you about and you say, okay, great, now we can really dig in and help you with that?
Yeah. For a lot of us, it's customers who have some level of legacy infrastructure that they're fusing to the cloud. So it's a hybrid architecture. And what they want to be able to do is, how do I protect my investments that I've made historically? How can I gather the telemetry data or other useful insights that are being generated by that? How do I combine that with the new data that's being generated by my cloud environment? And how do I wrap a context around all of it so that I can really understand what's going on? I don't want to have 4 different tools for different slices of my infrastructure. I want one thing that gives me holistic visibility and that can keep up with the rate of change that is putting pressure on the traditional approaches to tooling. That is a key thing that we hear from our prospects all the time.
Interesting. I think something that's fascinating about the observability market too is you mentioned open source, and there are tools available, but it's also open telemetry and the way that's been adopted by the technology companies, not as a sort of playing the standards game, like we've all watched, and then we go implement the standards that's favorable to us. There's really been some real kind of, I think, genuine adoption of open telemetry and open tracing and some of the technologies coming out of the Linux Foundation. I think that's pretty unique and interesting. I don't know if that'll happen again in other segments, but how does that shape your strategy?
We think it's super important. I can imagine that there's a lot of sort of incumbent vendors for whom find this threatening. They've made their bones over the years by having their agent or their way of collecting data be the standard. And that having an open standard now creates a higher risk of displacement for them. Yeah, our view is that if the standard creates a ton of value, it's going to get adopted, and our job is to embrace it and help customers get more value out of that data. So we're big fans, and we're sort of expanding our full support for open telemetry in every subsequent release.
Open source is always challenging us to kind of get the new model, right? And customers know whether you really kind of get open source, open telemetry, and support for it as opposed to kind of paying lip service for it.
Absolutely.
It's being demanded. It's being requested by customers, and at least we're seeing it in RPs. And
I agree, and I think it's highly supportive of this shift left trend, right, where you're getting your developers more engaged in actually doing the instrumentation of the code that they're writing, and then having sort of a common language to be able to talk with the operations folks who are managing this code and the overall platform that it runs on. If you have sort of a common foundation of data, it's much easier for these groups to speak and to do their job together, as the term DevOps implies they should be.
Well, I think you're doing something right when new terms emerge like observability-driven design and development, right? Now, how do you build in, just like we build in security, you mentioned shift left also for observability.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. It's very, very interesting what's happening.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, we actually think there's some interesting applications of this whole topology approach when applied to security, right? While our focus has been how do you create value for it in the field of observability, understanding the relationships between components and looking for relationships that maybe shouldn't exist creates an interesting data stream that you can feed into various XDR platforms to help them understand what's going on in a way that they don't currently today.
Great, great. Well, we have our studios here in Las Vegas. We're not live streaming, so we'll be putting these videos up as soon as possible. Probably, folks may watch this after the show's over. Where's the best place for people to get more information about Stack State and learn about some of the things that you talked about today?
Yeah, people can find us tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday in the AWS Marketplace Pavilion. And then for those who actually aren't at AWS and can't see us in person, you can always find us on our website at www.stackstate.com. There's free trials, demos, tons of videos, customer reference stories. So
great, good stuff. Well, good luck at the show, and it's fantastic talking
great.
to you.
Thanks very much for your time.
Stopping by.
Great. Take care.
We have some more great interviews coming back up, just like Toffer and Stack State. So I hope you will stay tuned with us. Check out the other videos. We'll be back soon.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey there, welcome back. Glad that you're here with us here at AWS reInvent 2022 in Las Vegas. We're at the Wynn at the Techstrong Studios private offsite studio with talking to some great guests. And I'm being joined today by Istamar, who is with Click. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Great. I'm excited to get into data and how we can get more access, more used to it. Before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the company.
I'm happy to. So my name is Itamar Hankorion. I'm the Senior Vice President for Technology Alliances at Click. So I focus on the strategic integrations and alliances and value we bring to customers by integrating with platforms like AWS and others. Click is in the data and analytics space. We've been a leader in that space for a long time. Simply put, we help customers get more value from their data. We help them get data to wherever they want to analyze it and make it ready for analytics. And we help them to visualize and analyze the data. So we have a broad portfolio of offerings, which we offer both as a kind of client-managed solutions and now more recently with Click Cloud, which runs as a SaaS. And we can talk more about that.
Okay, great. Well, let's talk about that announcement in a moment. I'm curious. Yeah, I've struggled with this problem too myself at times. Is it getting all the data in one location? Is it getting into a form that you can actually use and process? Is it knowing what you have and what you can potentially use for it? Is it all that? What are the typical challenges?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I think for most customers, it's all of that. Where we specialize in is in helping customers in the context of making data ready for analytics, unlocking their data, bring it to where they want to analyze it. So I think that's with the cloud, and you're seeing it again with all the innovation coming out, new services, new capabilities for data analytics, for advanced analytics and machine learning. The cloud has become a great platform where you can do so much more with your data. The challenges customers have is how do I get the data there in an efficient way? How do I get it there in a timely way, especially when you need more real-time, fresh data? And how do I accelerate, simplify the process of making the data ready for analytics? And in terms of where they want to use it, it's not necessarily one environment. I think one of the key things in the cloud is that it gives such a diversity of services.
Right.
So we have customers that want to bring data into a data warehouse, whether it's Redshift, Amazon Redshift, or it can be Snowflake or Databricks, for example, or running on Amazon Web Services. It can be in one of the RDSs, databases as a service on Amazon. It can be a streaming environment. It can be a data lake. So and many customers we actually see when they unlock data, they bring it to multiple places because they drive different types of analytics and applications with it.
That's the problem with data. It's always all of the above, right? Because it's everywhere. Everything creates something else that I want access to.
Yes.
So what's the process like of working with you to help get that to a place where people can start to use it? And then we'll dive into SAP.
Sure. So we've been in the market for many years, helping customers. We have over 38,000 customers around the world. We work very closely with our partners, AWS, Snowflake, Databricks, others. We work with system integrators and regional SI partners that help provide solutions to customers. So our customers typically engage with us directly or through one of our partners, and we focus on making it easy to do business with us and help customers turn their data into value faster.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about SAP. You came in an announcement during reInvent about something about SAP. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. We're very excited about that. So while we support a lot of types of enterprise data, we see a lot of demand and a lot of potential and opportunity with SAP data. So again, as a focus, we focus a lot of enterprise data, but we also focus on the most core enterprise data customers have. Think SAP, think mainframes, right? If you're running an SAP system or a mainframe system, it's your most important business data is in that system. So you're running your orders, you manage your inventory, do all the financials. So customers who use SAP, their most important business data is there. So if you want to get more value from data, whether directly with the SAP data or whether by combining the SAP data with other data, you want to bring it to a place where you can put it all together. So we're seeing an increased demand from customers that want to get more value by unlocking their SAP data. They want to bring it to the cloud. And what we've done is we've created a very unique solution for that. And we could kind of go into the different things that make it unique. But one of the things we also announced this week is the availability of what we call solution accelerators for SAP, also on Click Cloud, on our SaaS platform, where we also now have the data integration capabilities with the Click Cloud data integration.
So kind of templates or guides or a way that you can accelerate how you can get access or use that data.
It's a great way to think about it. So if you take a step back and look at everything you need to do to get value of SAP, there's actually quite a lot that needs to get done. And
that's a big charge right there.
and that's why for some customers, sometimes they're not sure how they can do it. So together with AWS, we also made an announcement with Snowflake this week. We create reference architectures for them to understand how they can make it happen. But the solution we put together consists of a few key elements. One is actually getting the data for the cloud. How can you facilitate the delivery of the data, the extraction from SAP, and the delivery to the relevant data service you want to use on AWS? Again, we do that with high efficiency, with all the types of different SAP systems customers may have. If they're still on ECC or they're using HANA or S4HANA, we have the way to get all the data out very, very efficiently, including continuously in real time, and make it available in a fit-for-purpose manner in the data service they want. The second step is all the transformation, because the data as it exists in SAP may not be modeled in the right way you want to have it for analytics. So we help take care of all the conversion and transformation of the data to create an analytic-ready business model, data model, like a data mart. And then third is we can also look at creating the visualizations that actually help to visualize, analyze, understand it. Also with integration to machine learning environments like Amazon SageMaker, for example. Now these solution accelerators, think about a pre-packaged solution. We take very common business needs like order to cash, inventory analytics, financial analytics. And what we've done, we basically pre-packaged all the knowledge and best practice that customers would need in order to accelerate success with those kind of initiatives. And there's a lot that goes into that. We pre-packaged it. It's available to accelerate their proof of concept, implementation process. And we just now made it available also with Click Cloud data integration.
Okay, great. Yeah, certainly it's kind of heartbeat of the organization kind of information, ERP. I'm curious, are the questions or the things that businesses want to analyze, has that changed over the past couple of years with digital transformation, moving to more digital experiences, focused on customer experience and reliability, things like that? Those are kind of the watchwords of what we think about in the software world.
That's a great question. I think for some customers, it's doing more for they used to do before, just doing it still faster, easier, lower cost with what they can do in the cloud. I think the more interesting one is really the reinvention, the modernization they're looking to do. So for example, within the SAP tech stack, they may have done reporting in the past, but today they want to analyze data from SAP and non-SAP data. For example, we had Siemens Energy as one of our customers, and they're bringing data from SAP along with data from Salesforce and from Oracle systems they have, and they want to bring it all together. So that's something new, and from all the data, they try to have new insights which they haven't used before. We see customers that are starting to look at real-time analytics. So it's really important for them to look at the current data, right? So it needs to be fed in real time so they can analyze it in real time. We see customers that want to do predictive, to kind of combine descriptive analytics along with predictive analytics. So that's the integration of machine learning, for example, into that process. So I think we're seeing a lot of new use cases that go beyond what people have tried to do before. And that's where experimenting and building it faster in the cloud just makes a lot of sense.
It seems also it makes a lot of sense. It seems also that we're in a business climate where we don't always have to make grand moves, right? We want to be able to experiment in market. We want to do a variation of a product in a different market, at a different variation, I guess a different competitor of what that might be. But we want to be able to do that quickly, but we want to get access to the data quickly, right? It doesn't help us to go roll that out and then wait 6 months to find out if it was effective. We want to know that day, that week, right? Are we seeing different or the same results, or maybe some good or bad surprises in it, the experience?
Yes, I think you're hitting on a very important point for many of our customers, which is agility. So again, a lot of these things are new, but they can't wait 6 months and work in those kind of iterations. They want to work in much faster iterations. It usually takes very few weeks. So making the data available makes a difference. And part of what we've built into the platform is also the ability to automate a lot of that transformation process, so that the outcome with the business data that's ready for analytics is available faster. And then if you wanted to adapt it and change it, again, you can apply those changes faster. So part of the whole idea of the software we brought to market is to help customers innovate faster and be more agile in rolling out new solutions. So I think it aligns very well with what you described, the trend you described.
There's several kind of moves happening, like in the observability world with cloud native and all of that. There's things like observability-driven design in the software process. Seems like we need something similar. It's that analytics-driven design, or maybe it's data-driven design of what data do we need to be able to telemetry, not just of the app, but telemetry, the experience of the business process or the business outcomes. So you also know you've got the data. You don't have to kind of fabricate it through connecting too many dots.
Correct, and part of our platform also includes a catalog. So again, when we create all these assets, part of what we do is we make it available in a catalog so customers can achieve a few things. First of all, they can more easily find what they have. So the catalog acts as a bridge between the process that makes data available, and now I have all these assets available for me, and those application developers, users that want to know, hey, what data do I have available? So the catalog becomes a way to drive more utilization of the data that you actually made available, because more people can easily find it. The second element is trusting the data. So how do I know that the data I'm using is actually good data, it's a data I can use? And that's where things like lineage come in. So where did the data come from? What happened to it along the way? And if I'm actually looking at this number, this figure, can I trust it? So all of that is built into the platform that we made available, because that's what customers are looking for.
Fantastic. Well, very exciting. Congratulations on the launch and the business. Where can folks find out more if they're interested in the SAP capabilities or other services that you offer?
Thank you, first of all. And well, a few things. If you're here at the AWS reInvent, you can come visit us at the booth. We have a lot of experts at the booth. We have demonstrations of the product. You can also find it on our website. That's probably the easiest, to go to our website, click.com/SAP/Amazon. You can find everything there. There's lots of video demos, there's materials as a way to get started, and also it'll make it easier to engage our team if you want to start discussing this further. We spend quite a lot of time with our experts to help customers with workshops to kind of understand the art of the possible, understand how they can build modern architectures, then help them through proof of concept, proof of value, to really see, hey, we can make this work. We can, within very few days, we can have a data mart from SAP already running, on a data warehouse, in AWS.
Boy, how fantastic that would be. Well, great. Check out click.com and find out more about the AWS and SAP, and I'm sure many other offerings from Click. Well, thanks for joining us. Hope you have a good rest of the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll be back with another great guest real quick, so don't go away. Keep checking us out. We've got a lot of interesting topics coming up, so we'll see you in a few.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Hey, everybody. Oh, God, New Year. My goodness, 2023.
2023.
And our first Techstrong Research review of 2023. I'm Mike Rothman, GM of Techstrong Research, Chief Strategy Officer of Techstrong Group.
Mitch Ashley, CTO, Principal, working with Mike on research.
Who are you? What? What, Mitch? Who are you?
Oh, I'm a guy that hangs out.
That's right. That's right.
That guy in class. Which class does he belong to? I don't know, but he's been here 8 years.
Yes, he's been here for a while. We're not quite sure what he does, but he's just kind of here and around here. No, we all know what Mitch does. He keeps, kind of everything stitched together and keeps me honest and helps out with all sorts of stuff. So, Happy New Year, my friend. It was nice to have a couple of weeks off. We haven't recorded since, I think, mid-December. So it was nice. You have a good holiday? Everything was good on that front?
We did. I won't talk about Southwest Airlines, but maybe I will. But we'll
Don't talk about it. Yeah.
We did.
Technical debt. Let's just say technical debt, came back and hit them in the head upside.
I think it's technical karma is what it is.
Yeah. Maybe.
So anyway, a whole nother topic.
That it is. So, I think for our first review of the year, we kind of wanted to go into a little reminder that Predict is this Thursday. So Mitch and I have been just, again, in the coal mine, not really, kind of seeing much about what's going on out there, really focused on, kind of documenting the trends that we think are going to happen in 2023. Really things that you need to think about and watch out for in our clear 4 areas of coverage. DevOps, obviously DevOps, right? Cloud native, security, and digital transformation. We've got great panels. We've got, kind of a number of different, kind of research initiatives we'll be talking about, again, relative to our trends. So it's very exciting, and it really sets us up for the rest of 2023 from a research agenda standpoint. So it's been a ton of work, but we're certainly very excited about Predict this week. So come sign up, register, come say hello. And, if you do miss it live, all of the sessions will be up on the website.
Yep, events is where you can find it out. I think it's
Techstrong events. Exactly. Yeah. So I guess when we think about 2023, Mitch, let's kind of go into what's going to be different, right? What's going to be the same? Is it more of the same crap we've been dealing with? Is something fundamentally different? Are we going to see, some new technology that's going to totally change and impact everything that we do, right? Or is it going to be kind of run rate, let's get through the day, still grappling with this remote work thing and, trying to, again, kind of make progress on our initiatives that, kind of got started last year.
So fast we could go down. And one I wanted to mention is I'm hearing this term silent hiring. We've heard retiring in place or, quitting in place, that kind of thing. Now there's this term, maybe HR folks just need new terms. They want to be cool too. But anyway, it's not hiring people every time for a role that you need. It's repurposing or giving people an opportunity to move into other areas with an existing staff, or it might be contracting, consulting, that kind of thing, which is not unusual for a downturn, right? If you're not going to hire, you still got to get stuff done. And you probably don't have every talent that you need on staff. And so give people an opportunity. So you think about downturns, folks are always concerned about jobs and things like that, but there is opportunities as well. And if you ended up losing a job, you've always can go into contracting, consulting, and kind of fill in the gaps and while you're looking for the next position, or be proactive and say, I know we have a need in this area. I know we're interested in AI. I actually been studying it or whatever. I'd like to help out. Whatever you can do to kind of step up. And I think that's a good thing to do during tough times is we all need people to step up all the time, but especially when we're being challenged.
Yeah, that's right. And let's kind of dig in on the whole tough times thing a little bit, because, again, is it going to be a soft landing? Is it going to be, a full-on recession? Is it going to be, there are a lot of different ways to, kind of analyze this. But what's interesting is again, I've been in security for a long, long time, right? So I've been through a number of these different cycles, looking at it specifically from a security standpoint. And it always seemed that when security started to slow down, we were, close, if not at the bottom of the typical business cycle, right? Because security is viewed as something that's very, very critical. Can't back off those investments. Bad things happen when you don't continue to invest in the security environment and security infrastructure. And then it tends to be one of the earlier technologies to recover. Right. Once we kind of get out of that trough and start to head back up the business cycle, security tends to be one of the earliest ones that recovers. Well, we have started to see that slowdown in security. Right. So that is heartening from the standpoint that says we're probably closer to the end of this downturn than to the beginning. But that being said, it also means that at the trough, folks, again, all bets are off, right? So what happened from a budget standpoint? Maybe folks continue to invest. We'll see, right? We'll see if that stuff happens and our projects got pushed out at the end of the year. We'll see if those come back onto, kind of the agenda for Q1 or even into Q2. But from a planning perspective, again, we've still got to focus on the business outcomes, right? What are we trying to do with this technology? So it's not a lot of just technology for technology's sake. It really is about let's kind of, again, when we're fighting for scarce resources, we have to be able to make that business case for why this investment is important. And again, just poking fun a little bit, I don't know that Southwest Airlines is going to have a lot of problem getting some investment to update those systems that have been largely the same for the last 20 years, right? So they're going to invest because they have to, right? Their technical debt got to be overwhelming from that perspective. But other things that aren't as obvious, again, I think we're going to have to get better and sharpen our tools in terms of, kind of how do we present that case to the business folks to get the resources we need to execute on the projects that will impact business.
Well, if you need to step into a new industry, doing business case analysis on Southwest Airline is what every MBA student will be doing for the next 50 years. But anyway, that's all.
Total fiasco, but notwithstanding.
You and I have been through downturns before and also been in startups during downturns. But sometimes it's kind of the crucible. If you haven't proved the model by now and you've been going at it, spent a lot of money, yes, you might get shut down or you might get, significantly trimmed down. But it's also, things have changed. Whenever they kind of lock up and you've got to tighten up and focus on some certain things, people also, when they look to recover, it's a good time to say, well, how are we going to do this differently? Oh, well, hey, Mitch and Mike and their startup company have done something interesting. Now it's time to take advantage of that. So in that upswing is often an opportunity for entrepreneurs to step into the market or have something to step in the market with. So they're also investing in R&D and developing product, or maybe getting with customers, even though they may not be buying at the moment.
No, I think that's right. And let's kind of relate that back to the reality of what folks have to do in our spaces, right? So again, we kind of came up and we're doing Predict this year, and we're going to see, a bunch of trends documents that are coming out of Techstrong research. And let's just hit pretty quickly each of the 4 topics and really relate to how our main theme, kind of starts to be colored or, kind of impacted by, kind of the economic environment, right? So if we start with DevOps, right, our main theme is long live DevOps, right? Because that's this whole idea that, well, DevOps is dead. People aren't doing DevOps anymore. SRE is shiny and sexy, and platform engineering is going to replace it. And the reality is none of those are really the case. What we're talking about is DevOps as a framework, right? As a process, as a mechanism to build the raw, kind of the raw materials, which is really just intellectual property at this point, into business value, right? We're going to do that through some type of DevOps pipeline, and that's not going to change regardless of whether we're investing, whether we're contracting, whether we're revisiting different projects. Innovation is driven in a DevOps mindset now. So I don't really see a lot of, impact to, kind of the framework, impact to the mentality. How quickly can we get there? Right. That may change a little bit, but for the most part, I do think that, kind of DevOps is front and center, whether you want to call it that or play around with the words. I think that remains front and center regardless of, kind of the economic cycle.
It's something that I say often, which is DevOps is not a technology. It's how you create software. It's the approach, this culture, the mentality. And I think DevOps has proven its resilience in how it's expanded by itself. Others have adopted principles and concepts of DevOps and AI ops and data ops and asterisk ops, right? There'll be a new one next week, which I'm actually fine with because that says people find something of value that they apply in their domain. So, I think DevOps is dead as clickbait. And that's kind of, if you truly believe that, I think you don't know what DevOps really is. You're stuck on the technology standpoint. But I think the other part of it is what DevOps is now is not what it's going to be a year or 2 or 4 down the road, right? It will continue to evolve just as technology will push it, organizations adopting, pushing it, other factors. Will it be around with us forever? Well, we still have monolithic applications, so yes, it'll be with us forever. But it'll evolve and change. And maybe something else will step in and be kind of the next kind of plateau of where we go with it, but it'll be a stepping stone onto whatever that is.
Yeah, that's right. And now we kind of think a little bit about cloud native, right? So cloud native theme is the long march. And this is this idea of really cloud native technologies, cloud native projects starting to become the underlying foundation for, again, a lot of the technology, kind of infrastructure that we're moving forward and building a lot of this modern environment, modern development on top of. It doesn't happen quickly. Right. We're talking about, a long march. It's something that took decades, for other major kind of technology waves, whether it was client server or, the LAMP stack or what have you. It didn't happen overnight. So cloud native is not going to happen overnight, regardless of the fact that we spend most of our time in cloud native land. So we may get a little bit of a colored view from that perspective. But in this downturn, right, in a time where we're constraining, if anything, that buys us a little bit more time, right, to really refine the technologies. Part of what we're talking about is the enterprise capabilities around things like Kubernetes starting to become more mature, right? So that we can start to, say we can support mission critical workloads, kind of in this cloud native environment. And I think if anything, taking, kind of the foot off the gas gives us time to digest a lot of this new technology that we've kind of thrown into the mix over the last couple of years.
And the great thing about it too, Mike, is it isn't just dependent upon buying products. Yes, there's technology that we want to buy from our suppliers, but Kubernetes is open source, open telemetry for observability and tracing, distributed tracing. Microservices is a design concept. It's not a product. There is open source for service mesh. So you can apply some of these things and start to use it or take it to the next level, in part through open source. It's a great a way to initiate it if you haven't already, and really learn from it, because it's sort of like in driving school and if you're a race car driver, you don't take this track at full speed when you're first time you go out, right? You know the track in your mind, and you know the apex of every curve, and you know how to take it. Well, you don't get there day one, lap one, and that's what some of this time can afford you to do, is to learn it.
Yeah. Now for security, our theme is security is job one. Right. And again, I think we don't need to get into the technologies and the management. We're going to go all through that, kind of both at Predict as well as, kind of as we move forward into Q1, Q2 and the rest of the year. Right. But the real idea here is it's not even a technology that we're thinking about with this. Right. It's not a new innovation. It's the mindset. right? That security is critical, that everybody has to think about it, that it needs to be baked into a lot of what we're doing from a DevOps standpoint, from a cloud native standpoint, as we think about digital transformation, which we'll get to, right? We have to really start to consider, and again, kind of how do we ensure that a mindset of protection starts to permeate through everything that we're doing. And again, I don't think that's related to the downturn. If anything, it gives us time to revisit a lot of those motions, revisit a lot of those philosophies, policies, et cetera, and really, again, give us time to ingest and integrate a lot of what it is that we've been trying to protect over the last couple of years.
And I think security has had the fortunate event of expanding into more than just traditional network protocol, protecting devices security. It's gotten into application security. It's gotten deeper into cloud security. It's gotten into APIs. It's moved into areas we haven't been in heavily before. And now we were at the table in 2022. We're getting ourselves there. And I think now's the time to take advantage of that and continue that motion, going that direction and expanding what your group does through your collaboration with other teams as well as your own knowledge and skills. So it's, we talk about more of the same, but it's more of the same with more breadth, right? Yep. And everything is security and everything's about everything.
That's right. It's kind of think about the tentacles of security really starting to, kind of become more enmeshed with, everything that we're doing. And finally, digital transformation, last, but certainly not least. I think this is the one where we do see significant impact from the fact that investment is going to decrease, right? So again, and the reality is due to the pandemic, due to, kind of the advent of remote work, we've done years of digital transformation in a very short amount of time, right? So our theme is day 2 is now. So day 1, that initial wave of transformation has happened. Right now, where do we go now? What do we do? And the reality is, again, I think that, kind of a lot of new projects, if there isn't a very clear business value outcome driver, right? Not new revenue, not new, kind of opportunities, but, really a way to streamline the existing business, because that's what folks are going to be thinking about in the first half of 2023, right? How do we improve our operations? How do we make our environment more efficient? If the digital transformation initiative kind of contributes to that, great, right? Full speed ahead on those kind of things. But if it's opening up new areas of revenue, if it's trying to gain competitive advantage, if it's rolling out, totally new product lines in a time where we just don't know when things are really going to recover, we obviously have much more significant capital requirements and issues for companies that are just operating today. I just don't think that it's safe to assume that we're going to have the same level of investment. So I think that digital transformation is really about completing the swing on a lot of the initiatives that were already in flight and making sure that, again, you're thinking about where to go when stuff starts to warm up, but don't get kind of attached to, initiating those projects, maybe anytime in 2023. I think we may be having a different conversation early in 2024, but that's kind of what we see for 2023.
Well, it goes back to our theme for Predict. The whole conference is about stand and deliver, right? And that's, if you take those other 3 areas and put it in the context of digital transformation, we're not in the crazy days of a domain name will fund your startup, right? Or an idea will fund your digital transformation project. Maybe we weren't exactly that crazy, but now it's time to take those other things and deliver and use what we know, continue to learn what we need to learn by applying it to do that. But we need outcomes. We need results. It isn't just let's flip to cloud native because that's the next cool thing. It's, well, why, where, and what pieces of it. It doesn't have to be, it isn't an all or nothing transition. Same thing for DevOps. It isn't just let's throw it open, everybody now do DevOps and thou shalt do it. No, let's be really smart. Let's create centers of excellence for cloud native, et cetera. So I think you say this all the time, Mike, about it's about the business, it's about the business outcomes, and we have to keep that in mind that the technology is here to serve that purpose. And if it doesn't have customer positive impact, it doesn't have a revenue cost savings. It's hard to justify everything on cost savings. So you need some things that are going to propel you forward. And I think, kind of going back to the Southwest example, I two things I want to say about it. Yes, it was technology failure and underinvestment in systems for their scheduling and for their baggage systems and all that. But it also pointed out a couple of things. One, some complexities about their business model and how they had not do hubs or whatever. But it also pointed out that at a certain scale of either volume or chaos or both, you can't throw people at it. And that had been their modus operandi when things went, hell in a handbasket, is let's just all get in conference rooms and we'll manually schedule all this stuff. It was beyond what any of it could do. And so everything fell apart. So it's a good time to say, what are those failure points for us? And let's take steps. We don't have to fix it all, but what things do we need to shore up? So we may maybe make the wrong product launch choice. We're going to pivot. We need to pivot fast. Let's retract and move forward.
That's right. So again, when we have to tighten our belt, we have to become more agile. We have to focus on the stuff that aren't necessarily dependent on funding, right? So there's a lot of work we can do, education, culture, philosophy, to move forward with certainly frameworks like DevOps, certainly, kind of the impact of security and, the security and protection mindset. Cloud native, again, it gives us an opportunity to really digest a lot of this new technology, let the tools cook a little bit, mature a little bit, so that we can really start rolling out enterprise class, mission critical workloads in, again, the short term future, right? 2, 3, 4 quarters, we'll think we're going to start to see rapid evolution on that front. And for digital transformation, again, really focus on, kind of the stuff that is going to drive business value in the short term, and don't get attached to, a lot of these new innovation types of projects, because again, I just think those initiatives are going to be pulled back on this year. So that's what we're thinking, right? For 2023, you'll get that and a whole mess more at Predict on Thursday. So make sure you log in and come, listen to what it is that we have to say, and then check out our trends research. So they'll be published up on the sites. I know we'll be doing some, work on each of our editorial sites to start to introduce those concepts. But our whole model is built on feedback. So if you think we're full of crap, please tell us. Right? If you don't think we're right, or you have a different take on stuff, we really want to hear that. So keep the feedback flowing. Come and check out Predict. And again, I'm excited for 2023. I think it's going to be bumpy, but in that bumpiness comes opportunity, and I think there's going to be a ton of opportunity for folks that again specialize in DevOps, cybersecurity, cloud native infrastructure, and digital transformation, which is our wheelhouse, right? Mitch, any other parting thoughts before we sign off for this episode?
One other thing I want to say about Predict is we live by what you just said, which is feedback, and test us. You tell us where we're full of, what. And we do that at Predict. It's not just you and I pontificating like this for a whole, morning and afternoon. It is us discussing what we see the trends are, what's happening in those 4 areas. But then we have people who are totally unrelated to us. We have panels for each one of those topics, actually several panels, where we test those theories. They're going to say, I agree, or I think you're full of baloney, and here's why. And we're going to just debate it. So you'll get more than just our viewpoint. You will get a collection of thought leaders from around the industry, some practitioners, technology providers. And that's, to me, as a CTO or CIO, that's what I need. I need to get some perspective on this. And I don't want just one or two people's. I want to understand what people are thinking who are trying to apply this to. So that is some of the value you'll get out of Predict and our work, because we will test this.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next week with our next episode of Techstrong Research Review. And until then, we will see you at Predict. And if not, we will see you next week in the review.
Great to see everybody.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Arul Jagadish, who is co-founder for Opsverse. They are a provider of a managed DevOps platform, and we're going to be talking about the transition to these managed platforms because we've been spending the last decade or more just building out these platforms ourselves in a lot of cases, and perhaps there's a better way of thinking about this. Arul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show.
So you guys essentially have taken a set of open source tools, curated them on behalf of people, and created that integration. So basically all the heavy lifting that goes with DevOps is now you guys. Have you seen an uptick in that kind of approach? Are more people inclined to go that route than go roll their own? And if so, what's driving that?
So Opsverse provides a managed DevOps tools platform. And we definitely see an uptick in companies using open source tools to take care of their DevOps needs. And as the complexity of managing these tools have gone up with the cloud native and public cloud adoption, we see an uptick in customers looking for managed services for DevOps tools. So we are definitely seeing that traction in the market.
Are they smaller companies or larger enterprises, or have you seen any patterns in the types of companies that are more willing and more inclined to go with a managed DevOps platform?
We actually see this trend across the board. There are smaller companies where they don't want to invest the engineering effort to bring out all these tools. They want a one-click platform where their engineers can focus on their core engineering problems, their core business problems. And we are seeing bigger companies where they are unable to handle the scale. For example, telemetry data is increasing, the scale of telemetry, the volume of telemetry is increasing, and they're finding it very hard to manage the scale, and hence they need platforms where all these tools are available out of the box. An example is Elasticsearch is a classic example where it's easy to get an Elasticsearch cluster up and running. But beyond a scale, you need dedicated engineers just managing your Elasticsearch for log management. So in those cases, companies are increasingly looking for out-of-the-box solutions.
And to your point, it seems like we're trying to pull more of the telemetry data and the metadata out of these tools. And that's hard to do if you're managing it on your own. So how do you perceive that managed DevOps is going to evolve? What kind of insights might I get from an observability perspective that I don't get today? I mean, there's more to it than just, lifting and shifting responsibility for the platform, I would assume.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, these are valid points. The approach we are taking is we are operationalizing open source tools which are built on top of open standards, which means for an existing customer, for a customer who is already using some of these tools, all these integrations are already available. So it's very easy to make that switch to a managed provider.
Mm-hmm. What's the challenge in getting people to wrap their brains around this? And are you seeing new customers kind of drive to this, or are people swapping out their existing DevOps platforms to go to this more managed service approach?
So we see both. So we see some greenfield environments where they are trying to formalize their DevOps tool chain, as well as we see customers who have gone one or two iterations trying to build this on their own. And as they hit the threshold of scale, they want somebody else to manage it for them. They want an out-of-the-box solution. So we see both kind of adoption in the market right now. Another driving factor that we see is the ability to manage multiple tools. So if you look at a software delivery pipeline, there are definitely multiple tools involved, and customers find it hard to integrate and manage these multiple tools. So people increasingly look for an integrated solution, an end-to-end platform, where some of these integrations are already worked out for them.
Of course, there's a lot of folks who have resisted opinionated platforms in the past because they think that they want to add a new tool here and they want that flexibility. Is there a way to extend the platform, add my own tools if I feel so compelled, or how do I get after that?
Yeah, I think that's a very important aspect of any DevOps platform, because the tools landscape will change very fast. It has been changing and will change very fast. So you should be able to bring in a new tool into the platform fairly easily. And the way OpsSource has brought out the platform, it's very plug and play. So a prospective customer can select what tools they want from our platform, and they can very easily incorporate the rest of the ecosystem of tools into the platform. And to be very specific here, we are offering a unified interface layer. We call it as an IDP, internal developer platform. With the IDP, they can bring our tools and other tools into one interface. So it's very, very pluggable. It's not a very opinionated platform. It's very easy for customers to put together their tools.
When you have that whole approach, where does that reside? Does it sit in the cloud somewhere? And what cloud? Or can I pick the cloud? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so we offer it in two flavors. One is a traditional SaaS flavor where customers can just run these tools, and OpsSource framework will run it in our cloud. So it's just a cloud-based SaaS offering. We also offer it as private SaaS. This is the model that we are pioneering, where we can orchestrate and run these tools within a customer's network. So all the customers' data lives within their network, but the OpsSource framework takes care of managing these tools and taking care of like day-to operations for the tools. So this is also a general trend we see with respect to DevOps tools, because DevOps tools need to talk to your like source code repository. Most of the tools will need access to your production systems. So in those cases, it's not very optimal to have a cloud provider have access to your like production systems. It's better to have these tools run within your network, under your control, under your governance. And with our private SaaS framework, we are able to achieve that.
I mean, people are figuring out that perhaps my core intellectual property shouldn't leave the four walls of the building. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, I mean, at least it should live within my AWS account or a public cloud account. There's no point in like sending your telemetry and other data to a cloud vendor who's also running in the same AWS, right? Under their account. So why not have everything within my cloud, within my AWS account, under my data governance?
What's next for you guys? Where do you go from here? I mean, you've got the platform up and running. What, as you look out into 2023, what's on your mind?
Yeah, so the IDP solution that I described is fairly new. Even from us, that's a fairly new offering. So we will be doubling down on our IDP offering and ensure that the IDP becomes sort of the single pane of glass for any software organization to do anything with their software delivery pipeline. So you can expect to see a lot of developments, both from us and from the industry, on the IDP layer. So it's a new thing that the industry is adopting. A lot of organizations are beginning to realize the need to have a good IDP. So you can expect to see a lot of updates from us on the IDP side of things.
How much has the DevOps platform itself become something of a bottleneck in organizations? We kind of hear the phrase Jenkinstein, which is, all these extensions and all these integrations. Have we got to the point where we're spending more time managing the platform than we are writing code?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the reality today. What we see in the industry is a typical engineer needs about 15 or more tools to do their day-to-day tasks, which means now every organization needs a platform where there are like 15 different tools that are interacting. So this platform, if it's not well-oiled and not managed correctly, becomes a single biggest bottleneck for a software organization. And that's where platforms like OpsVerse helps to ensure organization can focus on their core business, and this pipeline is solved and taken care of for them.
All right, folks, you heard it here. The tools may be getting in the way of our productivity. Hey, Arul, thanks for being on the show and best of luck.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me here.
All right, guys, back to you in the studio.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Adam Sandman, who is CEO for Inflector, and we're talking about the current state of application development in the sense that we want to have everything. We want applications that are secure, we want them to scale, we want them to be high quality, and we want them built fast, and we want no compromise on any of those issues. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show today.
So we've been talking about this issue pretty much for the last year intently. I mean, it's been around for a while, but forever and a day now, we've kind of been trying to say, how do we kind of develop applications quickly? And sometimes people would compromise on one thing or another in the name of speed. And I guess we got to a point now where we can actually do all these things that we need, where the application is high quality, it's delivered quickly, it's secure, and we're not going back to fix it all the time. Or is that just wishful thinking?
Well, I think it's a combination of the two. We're always getting further along that continuum. When we started doing software development, before Agile requirements were defined up front, people wouldn't see the software for maybe 6 months to a year after it was developed and maybe tested fully. And at that point, what they usually found was the software didn't meet their needs from a functional standpoint. It hadn't been security tested or performance tested. And you saw things with the healthcare.gov rollout where things were released and they had never really gone through the rigor of testing or user feedback. And so we're definitely a lot further along than we were maybe 5-10 years ago. And I've been doing this for about, 20 years. Both pre-Agile and sort of after the Agile Manifesto, we're much better. We're now looking at doing with shift left. We're moving to do security testing, performance testing, during development. We're not waiting till the end. People are testing automatically, while the app is being developed. We're not waiting till the end. So I think we're definitely a lot further along on the speed and the quality side. We haven't really grappled. So I think risks is one of the new areas that we're starting to see more focus on, because people will be focusing on what they've measured or what they they think to be the issue. And what happens is something that's unforeseen will trip them up. In the cyber world, the classic was that everyone was focusing on the perimeter. Firewalls, email, phishing, securing the perimeter essentially of your application, of your castle, the moat. But then there was a backdoor. All your source code was being developed, and people were not measuring the quality of the software being developed. And someone injected through SolarWinds into the software itself through the supply chain of all the components, malware. So they completely got around all the security. So that was a risk that no one had seen, and now, of course, everyone is addressing that. And then the risk, I think it was last year in Australia, Optus had a data breach where they had people steal test data, which was actually production data that had sort of been semi-sanitized. Again, something that wasn't being looked at. And so we're always chasing, I think, the last wall. And so therefore, risks and risk management and risk-based approaches are a way to think about the things before they happen. So we're not always playing catch-up, because it's an asymmetrical, unfortunately, environment. It's easy to be a hacker, easy to break something and find the vulnerability. You're defending 99%. You just need 1% to fail. So I think the risk part of what you stated, I think, is the area where we're the most immature, but certainly quality and speed, we're getting much better at balancing those two and not just making things fast and breaking things fast.
Are certain frameworks starting to gain more traction than others in this space? Because there are multiple ways to skin this cat, but are you starting to see people kind of shift in one direction, or are there multiple directions?
Yeah, definitely. I think like when Agile first came out, you had the Scrum versus Kanban versus extreme programming and a whole bunch of other methodologies that people don't remember, like DSDM and things. So in the same way that when Agile first came out, everyone was trying to do Agile in different ways. And now we've kind of evolved towards this Scrum plus extreme programming hybrid that's become effectively the normal for most Agile teams. When it comes to scaling Agile and dealing with the complexity of large scale development and the risks management that goes with that, again, there are so many methodologies like Nexus, Scrum, Safe. But I think Safe has become the one that people are gravitating towards. It's the most built out framework, and it definitely has the most, I think, discrete pieces that help someone piece it together. With the others, you're left more on your own. The challenge, I think, with Safe right now is that a lot of people, they look at it and go, it's so much, and it seems so complicated, and they're struggling of how to apply it, what's important, and what's important for them for the scale they're operating at and the way they're operating. And I think people, they do one of the two things. They either throw their hands up and say, it's too complicated, or they say, I want to do every single piece of this to the letter. And now you're not Agile. You're basically like Rational Unified Process Mark II. And I think between those two extremes is that people need to find a way to find what's valuable in a framework, say Safe, and the different levels of Safe, and understand how does it apply to how they develop software, where can they benefit, and what parts, frankly, should they just not bother with because it doesn't make sense for them.
There's a lot of controversy around Agile in general after all these years. And is what you described really at the root of that whole debate? It's just a question of right-sizing Agile to your organization versus kind of following the precise letter of the law and viewing it as, a set of gospel tenets that thou shalt not violate.
Well, I think that's true of Agile as well. I mean, I remember when we first started using that became Agile. When I started, it was extreme programming, and it was most of the principles are sound. If you look at the principles of what the Agile Manifesto talked about, testing during development, early feedback, getting feedback early in rapid cycles, most of it's good. But what happened is people have become dogmatic. So a good example we see a lot with our customers is user stories. If you go into the Agile Manifesto, and if you look at Safe and Scaled Agile, it's got some of the same pieces that, well, thou shalt have user stories, and they shall be 1 or 2 sentences long, which is great. But it doesn't say in Agile that you shan't have any other kind of requirements, but that's what people take it as. And we see a lot of customers fail because if you're working for a complex healthcare system or an aerospace or automotive system with tons of regulatory requirements, you do need user stories for your development team. You need requirements for your legal compliance and other teams that have to work within these very complex legal and regulatory environments that you work within, if you're a bank or an insurance company or an automotive. And I think it's that same approach in Safe. It's well, Safe says we can do these things, like having a product that's made up of what they call release trains, which I find very hard to understand the name. But the concept is a product that's long-lived, which you can have multiple releases, and it's a set of requirements that evolves over time. We would agree that makes sense. So I think people get hung up a little bit on both in Agile and in the scaling of Agile, obsessing about what's written as opposed to what was behind what was written, the why as opposed to the what.
It is clear that more responsibility is shifting left towards developers along with the Agile framework.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the relationship going to be between developers who embrace Agile and DevOps teams? How will that evolve from your perspective?
Well, that's an interesting one because we've seen the same story play out with testers. So in the testing world, testers have been radically integrated into Agile teams, and so testers had their own discipline before Agile. You develop software and someone tested it. So in the same way with DevOps teams, you've got the DevOps engineers who are supposedly different to the feature developers, but really the whole point of DevOps was to allow operations and infrastructure to be at the speed of development. So I think you have to have I think developers need to understand DevOps to varying degrees. If you're building a cloud native application for a customer that's deploying, every hour, that's one type of environment. If you're working in maybe a slower paced, maybe more traditional development shop where you're releasing once a month and the technology is a little bit less cloud native, you need less DevOps experience as a developer, but you still need to know the basics of continuous integration, continuous deployment, provisioning infrastructure as a service. I think developers have to understand this as they also now need to understand security, performance, and testing, whereas 20 years ago they didn't. So I think it's another skill that developers need to have, as long with user design. If you're working as a developer and trying to understand a user story, you have to have some degree of UX experience. Now, that doesn't mean you are a UX specialist, but you need to have at least some understanding of user experience.
So these other functions don't go away per se. It's just that everybody needs to have a better understanding of what the other member of the team is actually doing and so they can have a meaningful conversation about this.
I agree with that. And I think that's very important. It doesn't mean you're not going to have a DevOps expert. Like no one is going to have a team where every single person is AWS or Azure certified to the same level, because they're not going to have time to learn to code, and vice versa. So everyone will have specialties, but you will also need to have general understanding. It's sort of like university, college, where you have the GEs. Effectively, like your GEs will be your basic coding, basic DevOps, basic security and performance, and then you might specialize and become a front-end developer. You might become a server database, NoSQL, SQL, performance database kind of developer, or you might be more of an infrastructure type developer. And I think that's a very good way to think of the industry. It'll be different career paths, but with a common framework of core skills that you need to have.
What do you think is the challenge in getting developers to pick up some of those skill sets? In my experience, most developers have limited exposure to cybersecurity. I think it was an elective if they got exposed to it at all, and none of them ever really took it. So how do we kind of get them to kind of embrace it? Because I don't think any of them got out of bed this morning and said, let's go build an insecure application. And yet somehow or other, there's some sort of hill to climb. So what does that look like, and how do we get them up it?
And I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of the hardest challenge. It's cultural. I come from the development background, and like, leave me alone. I want to code. I'm having fun. I'm building this great application. It's fun. I'm going to worry about error handling or user sanitation, all the boring security stuff that I'm made to do. So it's from a university education or however people learn, that is up to the curriculum to sort of stress that. I think in a workplace where you're getting people who come out of college and are starting to develop maybe for the first time in a commercial setting, I mean, leadership, mentorship, probably some code review, sticks and carrots, but also maybe making it more fun, hackathons, doing things in an organization to bring out the gamification, as much as I hate that word, but to do something like that, like having a hackathon on security or a performance-a-thon. Who can get this one-page app to load the fastest will win something. So I think if you can bring out the competitive spirit in people, that seems to work very well with the development community. We do something every year called the Test Bowl, which is like a testing competition, and we found that helps people get involved in testing who are maybe in the non-testing disciplines. And I think any way to make it fun and you're learning something, it's not just a boring thing you have to do because someone told you. That's always the best way. But I do think there'll need to be some degree of quality control in terms of code reviews when you commit into a branch, and having someone review it who may be more experienced in security, say, and giving feedback if that isn't in place. Because I think it's too big of a risk, unfortunately, now to let people do it with heroic efforts.
As end users and even business executives cheering for the wrong thing, maybe we don't stand up and go, wow, that was awesome. Look at this security, where this is going to be great. Because, we kind of give that the tepid golf applause while we're all screaming about this great feature. So maybe the culture needs to change, not just among the developers, but maybe amongst us folks who consume software.
I totally agree with that. Unfortunately, it's like insurance. When you don't have a flood or you don't have a house burning down, you don't worry about your insurance, and when it happens, you do. So the developer who stopped a vulnerability isn't just celebrated because it's the vulnerability that is unfortunately on the news, and the new features that's in the news. And I think there's also a reticence to talk about some of this stuff for security reasons. So, for example, many companies, they'll publish release notes and they will publish all the new features and all the bugs. They won't necessarily publish all the security fixes, because if someone's not on that version, that fix may not yet be in place. And so there's legitimately a worry about celebrating some of this. So I think finding internal safe ways to celebrate and reward this is important. But obviously it is more difficult because some of the stuff is more sensitive by its very nature, especially on the security side.
So what's your best advice to folks? Do I just throw everybody in a room and lock the door until they all figure it out? Or is there some way to kind of gently nudge everybody in the right direction?
Oh, that's a hard question. I think it's leading by example, having people who are in a leadership position in development actively taking on development tasks that involve security, modeling the way. I think it's also understanding risk management and taking we do a session where we literally do a brainstorm on risks, and we have everyone, developers, testers, managers, UX people come in and talk about all the risks that could happen, and we make it as fun. What's the most wildest, craziest thing you could think of? Like, I don't know, someone could drop coffee on the machine and it codes itself a vulnerability. And then think about all of these and rate them from the most likely to the most implausible. And somewhere in the middle, you'll find the things that people thought were implausible, but not super implausible, and then have people investigate those and make it a research topic. So trying to make it fun. I mean, there is that brainstorming lock in a room, but having a risk framework helps a lot. And then also from specific performance security, having someone like go off and say, for this month, you're going to be the security guru, come back and present back to the team. We also give opportunities for growth, like going to DEF CON. So we sent some of our security people or people interested in security to DEF CON in Las Vegas, and they get to see crazy stuff there, like people trying to hack pacemakers. And when they come back, much of it's not applicable, but it does fire people up because people always want to go to a dev conference and learn about the latest, React framework. But if we're not sending people to a fun security or performance testing or whatever it is conference, somewhere that they can get jazzed up about it, I think you're always going to be fighting that cultural war. And then I do think frameworks like SAFE, things where risk management is being baked in, are really important from a sort of structure and programmatic side of things.
All right. So we're at the start of 2023. What's your crystal ball telling you for the future of Agile?
I think in 2023, we're going to see people doing the first large-scale SAFE implementations, SAFE-like implementations. I think we're going to see risk management mainstreamed. I think risk management is going to go from being something that is niche in organizations to being something that everyone understands and everyone uses. So I would say those two aspects will be the biggest, maybe unsung stories of 23, but when we look back, I think it's what's going to change the industry.
All right, folks, you heard it here. The only way to secure those software supply chains without compromising on the speed at which things are developed and the quality of the applications is to start with those fundamentals. Adam, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Michael. It's a pleasure.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
Is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're back live in Detroit for KubeCon. This is our day 3 coverage. I'm happy to be joined. So this gentleman here I know from my security days. We probably know each other longer than we both want to admit, but at least 15, maybe more years. His name's Paul Stamp. Paul, welcome.
Hi, how are you, Alan? It's
good to see you, my friend.
Yes.
So look, you're with Cato, right? We're going to talk about that, but before we do, I already said, how do we know each other? So you got to talk a little bit about your background.
Sure, yeah. So I've been in security for about 25 years.
Yeah, every bit.
Yeah, I started off as a security consultant, and then one day I answered an ad in the Boston Globe to be an analyst for Forrester. So, I was an analyst with Forrester for a couple of years, then kind of spent some time at RSA, and then there was a little bit of time at AWS, and then since then I've just kind of been doing smaller companies, kind of doing security things, security product management at smaller companies. It's been a great ride. I've really enjoyed it.
It certainly has. And I think I don't know if you were at Forrester when I originally met you.
I think I was, yeah. I got to meet a lot of people in that job. It was great.
But we've stayed in touch all through the years. And now, lo and behold, we're both here at KubeCon, Cloud Native.
Indeed.
You're with the company, it's called Cato.
That's right.
So, share.
Sure. So, Cato, we do automated incident response, security incident response for cloud workloads. So, you've got your XDR or you've got your intrusion detections or your SIMs that will trigger off an alert. What we do is we automatically fire off the process of acquiring the workload, whether it be a VM, a container, a serverless function. We'll do, we'll get whatever data we can, whether it be logs, we'll do a full disk acquisition, memory, and we'll automate the entire process of what an analyst would do, of going through that and then presenting back to the customer, to the user, what we think went wrong. Was this a false positive? If it wasn't a false positive, when did we start to see this activity? What do we think is actually going on here?
Excellent.
And then for the people that really want to dive in and do more of that, we've got kind of forensic level detail about what actually went on that system. So
how do people engage?
Sure. So we've got a couple of types of people. We've got the folks that the traditional incident responders, the traditional folks that don't want to use the desktop tools anymore because we run in the cloud ourselves. Then we're able to take advantage of all the parallel processing and all that stuff. And then you've got the other folks who are really reimagining how they do security operations. Right? They're not going out and hiring your traditional analysts. They're going out and they're hiring engineers to instrument every step of the process and ruthlessly automate every step of the process. And that's really where
that's what cloud native and the whole DevOps thing and the whole thing is about. So that's great. What about the show here? What's your impression?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that this is very much a developer show.
Yes, it is.
Very much a developer show. But the days of the security team kind of being in their ivory tower and out there are gone. Every developer is really
responsible for security.
I mean, because as well, if they don't do that, then something's going to happen where they're taken away from developing new features to go and fix security bugs or deal with security incidents, and they have a responsibility to do that, and they want to make sure that they're maximizing their time, so they're doing it right first time, right from the beginning, which is really interesting for folks like you and me that have been in the security space for a long time.
This is what attracted me to the whole. It's why I started DevOps.com 8 years ago. Paul, we're short on time. For people who want to get information about Cato, where do they go?
So CatoSecurity.com is a great place.
CADO.
That's right.
Security.com.
That's right.
Hey, man. Are you going to be at RSA?
Of course.
I'll see you there in April.
Thanks a lot. Cheers then. Bye-bye.
Paul Stamp, Cato Security. If he's with this company, it's a good deal. Go check it out. We're going to take a really quick break. We've got a lot of people waiting. We've got a lot to bring to you today here from KubeCon Detroit. We'll be back in a moment.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi, everyone. We're back here live in Detroit for KubeCon, day 3 of our coverage from the show floor. And I'm really happy to be joined by our next guest. His name is Alex Jones. Alex is with Canonical. Most of you know who Canonical is, but for those who don't, they are probably best known as the people behind Ubuntu, one of the most popular Linux desktops in the world. Or Linux distributions, I think is better.
Right.
I'm always thinking Linux desktop.
A stickler for nomenclature there,
yeah. Well, a little bit, sorry, but Linux distributions in the world. Alex, welcome to Techstrong TV. Thanks for being here. Before we jump into the whole Canonical and Ubuntu and all of that, a little bit, who's Alex Jones for our audience?
Sure. So I'm from London, UK, 2 kids. I work at Canonical for about a year now. I'm an engineering director there. I focus on Kubernetes, but a lot of my story is in the open source world. And that's really where that intersection of, hey, this is a company that I like because they do a lot of open source work.
Yes.
So I work in the CNCF. I'm a tech delivery lead for app delivery, which is one of the working groups that helps companies that want to bring their open source into the CNCF figure out how to do that.
Great.
Aside from that, I'm also doing a lot of advisory work, and so it was a really good match when Canonical said, hey, we really want to take our Kubernetes offering to the next level. We need somebody to help lead that, and so I found myself doing that, and that's why I'm here today.
Great, I love it. So let's talk about the Canonical Kubernetes offerings, right? One of the great things about Linux distributions, and again, our audience is technical, I don't have to tell them this, but what packages does it come with by default? What packages are available? And obviously, as Kube and containers became, this whole cloud native stack, if you will, as they became more prevalent, all of the Linux distros were saying, okay, we need to ship native with Kube and what have you. If you can, and I don't know if you even know this, but could you give us a history maybe of Canonical's Kubernetes involvement there?
Yeah, I think that it started with the realization that Ubuntu is being used for about 63% of all Kubernetes distributions in the world.
Almost 2/3.
Yeah, as the host OS, and that's pretty staggering, right?
Yeah, it is.
But the other way to look at that is it's an incredible responsibility, because that's on a knife edge, right? You know how fickle the community can be. If something doesn't work, they're going to get rid of it, right?
Yep.
So we thought, how do we double down and really capitalize on this? So we looked to the folks that are using it, the hyperscalers, the companies that started out thinking, we love Ubuntu, 20.04, like focal and beyond. How do we take that and actually start to make it run really well? So we start building out partnerships. We started saying, look, we have lots of different types of Ubuntu. We can slimline it. We can turn on kernel modules for you. We can do whatever you need. And those partnerships became more substantial over time. They started going back and forth, and we actually had some quite deep engineering conversations. And around about that time, we also started experimenting with, well, let's look at what Kubernetes looks like in the Ubuntu ecosystem. And you might have heard that Snap is one of our sort of jewels in our crown of what we think it makes a really good way of delivering open source projects. For those of you who may not be familiar, it's a little bit like apt, right? Except for Snap runs on a daemon, it was auto-updating. So I go snap install something, snap install, Chromium, etc. How do we fit that in with this Kubernetes idea that Kubernetes is multi-node, ability to bring out clusters? Well, being canonical, our job is to simplify things, right? Everything's complicated out there. We make our sort of value prop in that area of let's make it simple. So microkates came about. It was the idea of how do you create a single binary of Kubernetes and make it installable, just like a web browser, right? I want to have a Kubernetes, I want to get rid of a Kubernetes. And microkates absolutely took off. Around about the same time, there was also the Juju project at Canonical. And Juju was standing up OpenStack, standing up VMs, standing up whatnot. And it kind of went 2 and 2 with like, hey, we've got microkates, that's been a roaring success. We feel like we could also do something with Juju to stand up Kubernetes. And lo and behold, we put our first distribution out of Kubernetes. I think it was around 116, maybe 118, prior to my time. And there was a real appetite to manage not only OpenStack, not only Kubernetes, but Kubernetes on OpenStack with Ubuntu. And so you're starting to build this ecosystem that you can control from sysadmins who are super familiar with OpenStack. They know Cinder, they know Neutron, they know how all the parts work. And they now feel comfortable that, hey, I know how Kubernetes can be deployed on top of this. And we're not only upgrading their technology, we're upgrading how they feel about it as well. And so we were introducing that new angle of folks into this Kubernetes world.
Love it. Excellent. You mentioned platform. One of the kind of buzzwords we're starting to hear more of is platform engineers.
Right.
Platform engineering. It's a new buzzword maybe, but I don't think it's a new role, quite frankly. But that's me, I'm old. What is Canonical, Ubuntu? Are you guys kind of embracing this new role, or at least, not a new role, but this new, we have SREs, but to me they were ops people. Platform engineers are sort of ops people too, but what do you think about all of that?
That's my take on it. Well, I mean, really, Kubernetes is Linux, right? If you think about it, a lot of the drivers are just changing the IP tables, right? So, yeah, I think platform engineer kind of is cut from the same cloth of, it's a way of describing a context boundary of what are the things you care about. I'm a person that cares about the platform, and that domain boundary has a lot of stuff inside of it.
Yep.
I think it's the gradual inflation of your domain scope, because a platform engineer could now be observability. It could also be it could be the day one, day two. Mm-hmm. We all know that sysadmins have gone out of favor now, but we still do a lot of the day two operations, upgrades, updates. But no, that's now platform engineering.
Right.
I think the term has been reinvented because with the reinvention of the title, we're also trying to reinvent the practice.
Yeah.
So that's my feeling on this.
Excellent. All right. So I think we've done a great job of laying this all out. Let's talk now about what, here at KubeCon, news from Canonical, or
right.
Tell us.
We're super excited because we have a couple of key things that we wanted to bring to KubeCon, one of which is called strict confinement. I told you about snaps. I told you about apps. I compared them. Snaps is basically a process that runs. It does the updates on your packages. But there's also something else that snaps can do. They have app armor profiles around them. So when I install, say, Firefox, Chromium in a strictly confined snap, it's sandboxed. You can't get out of that, right? So let's think about applying that to Kubernetes with microkates. What if I took Kubernetes in a snap and put app armor around it? You see,
1,500 security companies all trying to solve the problem of container escapes. What happens if somebody mounts the sys folder or mounts the proc directory from their pod? Well, with strict confinement, that means that as soon as you try and hit the Linux kernel, it says, no, I don't think so. It gives you a denied exception. So what's really interesting here is when you're combining those technologies, I mean, AppArmor and SE Linux have been around a while, but when you bring it into that modern context, like I was saying with IP tables, you're suddenly able to solve a modern problem that's been created from container orchestration with traditional tooling. So strict confinement's interesting, but the secondary impact of that is Ubuntu Core, our immutable operating system, only runs with strict confinement. Ubuntu Core is for cars, it's for factories, it's for IoT. So now when we have a strictly confined microcase and Ubuntu Core, we have Kubernetes in cars. We now have folks in automotive, folks in energy at base stations for telco who want Kubernetes strictly confined. They can't afford to be even stressing about somebody who could jump out of their container. They need an immutable operating system. They need real-time kernel as well. Who has a stronger kernel story than Ubuntu? And I think there are maybe, I can't think of anybody, but I would say that, right? But jokes aside, it's like this narrative is all coming together. All the chapters of the book are coming together to build a story that's really compelling. So that's our first message. And if I have time, I'll say the second.
Take your time. I don't see anyone else waiting.
All right, well, that's awesome. So the second part of this kind of reinvigoration of all of our products is that we're shifting to solutions, right? We're solutioning for business problems. As part of that, I mentioned Juju. We also acknowledge not everybody in the world uses Juju, right? There are people that might use other provisioning and deployment tools. So therefore, we took a look at Kubernetes, we took a look at CNCF, and we realized that Cluster API is an extremely powerful tool. And so we have partnered with several different vendors to build Cluster API, but also to bring it into their tooling. So we built a provider for microcates, and we're building one for CharmedCates, which is our other distribution of Kubernetes. Now what that means is suddenly partners who say, oh, we only do CAPI, they're like, oh, Canonical do Cluster API, we can show them in our UI, we can provision their clusters. So if you were a shop that until now was doing just a traditional vanilla Kubernetes on AWS, on Oracle Cloud, etc., you now have the choice to pick microcates. You now have the choice to pick CharmedCates as well. And what that does is it gets Ubuntu onto those clouds. And with Ubuntu come the snaps that run these and the upgrade story.
The whole story. Yeah. Excellent. Hey, we are running low on time. You know, here's an important kind of thing we should all be mindful of. The CNCF is part of the Linux Foundation.
Right.
That's Linux Foundation. And Linux is still a integral, critical, foundational piece of this whole cloud native story. And I think you just made that case very eloquently. For people who want to get more information about all this, just go to canonical.com.
Microcates.io or canonical.com/Kubernetes.
Great. Hey, Alex, thanks for being
so
here on us. Check it out, Canonical.
Canonical.com.
Those domains, those again. Canonical.com is easy.
Yeah.
The other
Microcates.io.
Microcates.io.
Yeah.
Check it out. We're going to take a break. We're still live here in Detroit. We'll be back in a moment.
I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. We had some amazing interviews with industry professionals to give you the latest in the tech world. And alongside our extensive conference coverage, as well as our episode of Techstrong Research Review, we had plenty of great content. We'll be back again on Thursday, so we hope to see you then. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, stay strong. Techstrong.